marketing. So with us is محمد from Forward, and Johannes, he has his own marketing startup. Is that correct, Johannes?
That's correct, yeah.
Correct. And ex-PayPal. So Johannes has been amazing with supporting startups all across the world as well. So quick intros. So I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, give a bit of a background, and tell us about the companies you formed or that you work at. So we can start with Johannes.
Sure. Thank you, Amina, for a little intro. Yeah, so my name is Johannes Radik. I'm originally from Germany. That's why the name is a bit uncommon for most of you, maybe. So I am currently spending the majority of my time with my startup that Amina mentioned called Leadsy, which is basically a tool, a SaaS tool that helps marketing agencies and freelancers onboard their clients by getting them access to their marketing accounts like Facebook and Google in just a few clicks. So that's what we do. It's super simple, and it's something that I started about a year ago as a little COVID lockdown project, and now it's become a real business. Before that, I've been working in marketing for several years, almost 15 years actually. I'm getting old. I started my career at PayPal. I actually started there as an intern in the performance marketing team, and I left PayPal as the one in charge of SEO for PayPal.com globally. So SEO was kind of my main area of expertise there. But I also had some time to get into paid marketing and other areas, which I'm sure we'll talk about. After that, I worked for different startups in London, from B2C to, for example, a marketplace called Truly Experiences, which I will talk about a little bit, to D2C companies like Just Wears, and also B2B companies, usually in head of growth roles or head of marketing roles. And also, and this is how I met Amina, is I've been also working as a mentor for 500 startups. Since today, they're called 500 Global, where I help companies with growth, mainly focusing on building a strong and a stable growth foundation, have the right processes in place, and also optimizing marketing as a specific area.
Nice. Thank you so much, Johannes. By the way, can we use your platform here in the region, or is it limited to specific countries?
Oh, everyone can use it. We don't have Arabic yet, but we have the translation ready. So also, Arabic clients can use it. So yes, everyone can use it.
Okay, nice. We'll definitely later on maybe send them in the email like a link to your platform so that people can test it out as well. Thank you so much, Johannes. Mohammed, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amina. Thank you, Johannes, for the introduction. My name is Mohammed Musa, and I am the head of marketing at Flowered. Flowered is the go-to online flowers and gifts delivery in the MENA region and the UK. I have been with Flowered for over 3 years right now, and I am blessed to work and lead a great team of marketers, creatives, and a digital marketing team who are working on or leading our growth efforts, acquisition, and customer engagement. Through Flowered, users can connect and share their feelings with their loved ones in 23 cities across 9 countries right now.
Excellent, amazing. Everyone in the region knows Flowered. I personally use it for every single gift that I give. So you guys are real lifesavers here.
Amazing. Wow.
Okay, so we want to start with some stories. So we want to know from the best marketeers, what are some successful marketing campaigns that you guys have launched? We want to hear some stories from you guys. Johannes, do you want to start with that?
I would have said Mohammed should start, but okay, I can start with it. So the first thing I have to say is, when I started as a marketer, it was always a lot about campaigns. And I was usually the one helping other marketers to run their campaigns, supporting them. I was basically the part of the center of excellence where with our digital expertise, we would help them with the campaigns. But over time, I've actually have always been focusing more on systems and kind of more like always on campaigns that are not like the typical like, hey, let's run a big campaign and do something. So my expertise has changed a bit, or my focus has changed a bit. However, I do want to mention one which was very dear to my heart, also was quite successful. So when I was working for Truly Experiences, basically it's a marketplace for experiences, a little bit like Airbnb experiences. Nowadays, that wasn't a thing back in the day. And essentially, so there was obviously Black Friday was already a really big thing. I'm sure it's also in the region. It's something that is very much communicated coming from the US. And so, yeah, everyone is going crazy around Black Friday. And we wanted to make a statement and say, hey, you don't need to buy more things. You don't need to buy more stuff. And actually, we launched like a landing page which was nomorestuff.com. And we had a big communication around it across email, social, and so on. And we basically, I wanted to make a statement to say, hey, you don't need to buy more things. It's not something that actually makes you happy and that you probably need in your life. Obviously, also our angle was to say, hey, experiences are much better. And that's how we also generated some additional revenue through that, for sure. But it was really something that was more like, it's a brand building exercise, right? Where we really wanted to make people aware of our mission and position ourselves against what we believe is like our competitors, which is like buying stuff, you know, that people don't actually, that doesn't make them happy in the long term, we believe. Yeah.
Okay. And how did that go? Like when you launched that project or that campaign, why do you think that resonated with people, or why was it successful as a campaign?
It's a great question. I think a lot of our existing customers really believed in that too. So this messaging that we were kind of against buying things, it was something that we already mentioned in our marketing and our emails. So it wasn't completely new to our audience. And I think that's why it's really like hit the right spot with our audiences. So we had, you know, like hundreds of shares across social media, not necessarily thousands, but it was hundreds for sure. Like people really loved it. We had very positive sentiment and comments. We did generate definitely more than, I would say, $20,000, $30,000 in sales for sure, also off the back of it. So it was commercially successful too. And then also we were mentioned in some press, not like The Guardian, but in some smaller articles and publications. So it was successful. Yeah. And why? Because it resonated with our audience. Yeah.
Nice. I think that's the key, resonating with the audience. So I like that point. Yeah.
And
how
also,
about you, Muhammad?
of course, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Johannes.
The other reason that it worked was because Black Friday is something that, you know, it's so omnipresent, right? And so the press is looking for something different, like a different perspective on it. And I think that's another reason why some press had picked it up. Yeah.
That would definitely stand out. Like in Black Friday, it's all about buy more. Like it's cheap, so it's all about the volume. So definitely I could see that standing out that time. Nice. How about you, Muhammad? Any stories you'd like to share?
Yeah, so like there are many campaigns I have done, like, and I'm proud of. But like the two, like, I am very proud of, like Flowers 2019 Mother's Day campaign, Yoma Minich, and the other one in last year, 2020, the Father's Day campaign. These are my two favorite, and I cannot choose who's my favorite child, but I can tell you more about Father's Day campaign. I love talking about this campaign because as a flower company, you can imagine, like, okay, and you can tell, like, you can make a guess, like Mother's Day is the Black Friday for us. Like, it's a very important day for us. And last year, like, we recognized the difference in public awareness between Mother's Day and Father's Day. So, like, you know, like fathers are like less get affected and like for that. And being a father, I felt like, okay, you know, like this, we have to make a move. We have to encourage, and decided to encourage people to celebrate their fathers. And fortunately for us, like, it was very successful last year. It went viral. I have friends all over the GCC, even in countries that Flower are not operating in, are sharing these, and through WhatsApp, Facebook, all of these mediums. And we saw like this year and last year, and actually like see this year, a lot of companies are following our steps. And this is what makes me more proud and very happy about that. Like, okay, it's a movement. It's this awareness thing we have done in the region, and all of these companies are following us for that.
What can you tell us a bit about the campaign? Like, what was the messaging? How did you guys stand out? Because I feel like there's a lot of noise during like Mother's Day, Father's Day. Everyone's trying to push their content. So how were you guys able to stand out?
So Father's Day, actually, like, it is not that big deal in the region. Like, okay, so not here, like in the region. So like being a father, I can literally feel that. And I've been like, but what we did at last year, it was with one of the influencer celebrities, like in Bahrain, actually, like Ahmed Sharif, I think you know him, like, okay. And it was like very simple. We wanted to show like how mothers and like taking all of these credits, but the father is always there, is behind the scene. And this was comparison between Mother Day and like this makes like a contrast. It's just like when you're showing black and white like things, like all of this, but just like and it was very funny in a very thoughtful way. Like also like, okay, so how people to think about that, and it was very well presented. And it also like it's not only about brand awareness. Like we can see the impact, like the numbers from 2018 and Father's Day 2019, and this year in 2019 and 2020, and this year 21. The sales in this occasion, again, it's not the same as Mother's Day, but it's getting the traction and it's getting the attention and the awareness. And this is one of our core values is in Flowered, is thoughtfulness. We want people to like do this, to find thoughtfulness and appreciate all of these moments and expand all of these moments of thoughtfulness and appreciation in their life.
Yeah. You guys mentioned some really interesting points. Like you mentioned that it was a movement with your Father's Day campaign. Johannes, you mentioned that, you were trying to resonate with them. So it was all about the messaging. So like usually when we're talking like as non-marketeers, when we think about marketing, the first thing that comes to us is platforms. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. But what is marketing? Look, what is it to its core? Like if you had to like describe it from the bottom of your heart.
It's a very tough question. Like, okay, so like there's this people like they have always like this misunderstanding of marketing. What is marketing? And they also like they use it like they with advertising, promotion, branding, packaging, labeling. All of these like marketing function has been very broad in the and it's very evolving in the last decade. So I think it's simply like marketing is managing this connection between the company and the customer. It's this managing this relationship and communication between these two persons like this. It's very simple in this way, and I think Johannes can elaborate more on that.
Amina, thank you so much for asking that question, because it's something that I think about a lot actually, and I'm quite active on Twitter, and it's a topic that comes up all the time, because as Mohammed said exactly, people confuse marketing and advertising first of all. So they think, so for example, there's this famous kind of almost, it's actually a Silicon Valley trend, I don't know, but people in the Silicon Valley are very proud of saying, we don't do any marketing, but we're still so successful. Like, for example, Tesla, it's actually a big part of their story, right? And the reality is they may not be doing advertising. That's perfectly possible. I don't actually really know, but marketing is a lot more than just advertising, right? Marketing really at its core, for me, it's a process of really identifying and satisfying at the same time what are our customers' needs and wants, right? And that you can do that through so many things, right? So obviously that involves what product are you actually making? That is actually product management, technically speaking, is a part of marketing. No product manager would ever wants to hear that, right? Because they're like, no, we're not marketing. Technically speaking, it's part of that. But usually in the normal context, you probably have a product somehow, but marketing will still help to shape that product, like how it's positioned, which includes the pricing, any sort of like communication about it, as Mohammed mentioned, the packaging, all of that is obviously marketing. And obviously this feedback from the customer should always also come back to the product itself, right? Like, I mean, this is something we have spoken about a lot in our talks, in our accelerator program where we initially met. It's like, we want to make sure that we represent what the customer actually really wants. And we can only do that by talking to them. And so this basically also is a part of marketing, and it feeds back into the product. So that's the best sort of marketing. Yeah.
Okay, nice. So then marketing encompasses all of that. It kind of reminds me of like when you go back to like school or like the textbook where it says like the 4 Ps, the 7 Ps, price, place, people. So is marketing everything? Like, does marketing play a role in every function of a business? Like, I'm actually curious to see like what is marketing's role in like different departments and in the different functions? Because it seems like even when you guys are speaking, there seems like there's so much overlap. So how do you distinguish? How do you set that role?
You want to start, Mohammed? I want to hear your perspective.
No, go ahead. Okay. So again, like, so it depends on the size of organization and it depends on the, but just like there's no, I don't think there's no such function organization anymore. Like marketing, sales, operation, product, technology, they all overlap on all of the process. Like, so if you want like to have to communicate a good product, so you have to go get this input to the customers, and operation, so you should have all of these for your brand or reputation. You have to make sure that your operation team are delivering on the right time, all of this stuff. So because it will affect your reputation on the website. Like you have to have the good product, as Jonas said. Finance, you should have the right budget. You should have the right budget in place. So all of these marketeers, it's like just a Lego game. Like it's all connected.
Nice. And let's look at it from Flowered's perspective. So now at Flowered, as a marketing team, are you involved with the different departments within? So as a marketing, what's your involvement like with the different departments in Flowered? Okay,
so every day we talk each other. Like we are again, I'm blessed to work with such a great team and great people here. Like I know that every day I have our like, it's not fights, our discussions, with all of our departments, all of our team, because we might be indifferent. We have these differences between each other, but just like we know, it's all about working together. So toward this eyes on the prize, we have this common objective, and we're trying to work on that. So when our marketing team, our product team and technology team are working on this great feature, and they want to communicate, I have to know more about that, and I cannot achieve my target if I don't have if I have a buggy application or a buggy website, or and I have to make sure before I launch any tip that we have the right product mix in place, and I have to make sure and like tell our colleagues in the operation team that we are launching this campaign, so expect a volume of products. So they have to plan ahead their capacity. So every day, like no one is working as an island. There's no function again, like there's no one like, and all of these common feedbacks between each other. Like, okay, so I always share feedbacks. The team shares feedbacks about our performance.
Okay, nice. And Johannes, how has your experience been? Because you've worked in small, medium, large organizations. So have you seen a difference in that cross-functional relationship between marketing and other departments? Or how has it been generally across departments?
Absolutely. So the bigger an organization gets, for example, PayPal, and when I left, PayPal was already a massive organization, tens of thousands of employees, right? The more marketing gets siloed, or actually most departments get siloed. Even so, I mean, if we think about it naturally, the department that's most similar, or most similar in a way, is sales, right? Typically sales and marketing. So in some organizations, they're like one part, and then if they get even bigger, it's like two different ones, and then they stop talking to each other. And that creates huge problems, right? Because obviously marketing is as it's defined by most companies, it's a foundation for sales, right? So marketing typically helps to, again, position the product in the right way to make sure you attract the right people who then can be, or organizations who then can be sold to, right? But if that is broken, you get the wrong leads or whatever way you think about this. So that's just something that's very, very common with big organizations. At PayPal, as an example, what they tried to do to solve that was actually create a growth team. So something that came from Silicon Valley, to say, hey, and was more typical for smaller companies, was to create a growth team. And the idea with a growth team is almost going back to what marketing kind of used to be, or what it is in a smaller company, where you have like a data engineer, someone who's very creative, someone who can write code to build a product, basically, and you just work together in a smaller team and try to grow from there, and then at some point integrate it into the bigger monster. So I mean, as Mohammed was saying, like, first of all, we all need to acknowledge marketing is a lot of things, but that does not mean that a marketer needs to do everything, right? Of course not. And of course, there will be people who do different jobs, like a product manager, or someone maybe there's a specific role that's only doing pricing, or, you know, the packaging design. All that are different roles. That is fine, right? But in many ways, we need to communicate with each other in order to create the right parts of these puzzles to make it work for the customer.
Nice. So you guys mentioned earlier, so that marketing is basically sending the right message to the right audience, and that in order to do that, you need to work with different functions to gather that information. So can you give us examples of what is that type of information? Right now, I'm a small startup. We have a small customer service team. We have a small products team. What information should I be asking from those teams in order for me as a marketeer to do my job correctly and to be able to deliver the right message to the right customer? Maybe Mohammed, you can give us some examples from Flowered.
So basically, like, again, like, so just like to complete like this. So even for marketing is like the sub functions, like people are saying, like digital marketing and marketing acquisition, and even for digital marketing, you have sub functions. And when you start when you are a smaller startup, you are just like might be wearing multiple hats at the same time. So you are the CEO and the CMO and the CFO at the same time. So the kind of idea mainly, like, so when you start even when you are starting to any of your any company, you should like define your mainly your target audience, right? So whom and what, and then you build your product around that. Okay, and then you will start like asking questions like, okay, how these people are using or will use, like depends like on which stage you are. So if you already have the application is there, or just like the startup or the product is there, just like how are they using it? So you might get these data from analytics tool, Google Analytics, Mixpanel, or whatever tool you are using, Hotjar, whatever all of these tools you are using to track your customer performance, or just like even or you monitor that, or a focus group, whatever the tool you are going to collect this data, and then like how they are interacting with the product, right? So might be you have developed a product to solve a problem, and customers are using it for solving another problem, and you might want to pivot your all idea or product idea to do that. And what is the experience and what is the value they are having right now? Okay, so they have you have this product feature, and then you have this cost they have paid for that, and there's like what are the end value they are using and the end result, like that. Also like how like what, why would like buy this product at the first place? So what was in their mind when they're like, okay, how they decide if this product is unique, or what are your competitors? So all of these data or kind of data before you start, like you have to do that, or once you start, you have to, like before you go deep into the product, you have to just ask this question for you about your customers, and you get the feedback immediately, and then you pivot. but just don't get stuck to that feedback. Okay, so what about, like, we need to add this feature, and you have this product or app that is not focusing on the core value you have planned or produced.
Okay, so I think Mohammed mapped out some really important questions or data that needs to be gathered from the different departments. Johannes, how do we use that information now in a marketing campaign, or how do we use it to target or message customers?
Yeah, so my advice would be, and what I've also been doing over the years, is first you need to put this into like a central place and organize it a little bit. All this data that comes through, right? So Mohammed already said, hey, you need to know who's your target audience. There are different ways to kind of visualize them or formalize them. One is called personas. Personas are a bit of a controversial thing these days. Many old school marketers still recommend using that. I would be a little bit cautious. If you want, I give you some hints in a minute about what I would do instead. But basically what we try to do is like, how can we think of this fuzzy target audience, and how can we really see a person in front of us? And then that entails things like, what are their goals? What are their dreams? What are they trying to achieve with my product or service? What do they believe in? What do they hate? So for example, for Truly, right? A customer who is really against buying more things, who's more minimalist, but also believes in spending money to have great experiences. That would be like the mindset, the kind of the culture, the cultural fit that would be ideal. Okay, so that's really important. So what do they believe in? But then also, what would be concerns they have against buying your product? And what are challenges for them? So challenges, for example, would be, let's go back to Truly because I've mentioned it a lot, would be, hey, I just don't have the time. I don't know when to organize all these experiences. Okay, well, maybe we can help with that. Maybe we can address this challenge by telling you, you don't need to worry about anything. We have a concierge who books you in, and you just have to appear and show that you have this reservation, and so on. So there's, and also another concern for this example would be, we're not like a Groupon type of site, okay, where people feel like they're going to be treated like a second-class citizen. They're going to feel like, oh, they just went for the cheap deal. No, very different. So we need to be aware, like, what are these goals, concerns, challenges these audiences have, and then also what do they believe in, and what do they really not believe in. So that's also a nice way to think about it. And if I may if I could add one more thing, because I said personas are not always that great. So the danger with personas is, you didn't ask me this question, Amina. Sorry, I just have to talk about it a little bit. Sorry.
Go ahead, Johannes.
The danger with personas is, so very often personas have been focused on things like demographics, even like hobbies.
What is a persona, Johannes? Like, what is a persona for everyone
so
here?
Persona, yeah. So a persona is like a hypothetical character of your ideal customer. Okay, and there could be many different personas. I'm sure Mohammed has some examples for like gifting and flowers. So for example, you could say a persona for Truly experiences would be like a well-earning mid-30s millennial maybe, who really doesn't like to buy more things, has a really small flat, doesn't have space for things either, but he likes to do things on the weekend because he works really hard, and he has a partner who he wants to do things with and learn new skills and so on, right? But the danger is that if we define this too rigid and also use things that don't really matter. So I give you a really good example. It's, between so two people who are completely different, but they're both born in 1948. They both have 2 kids. They both grew up in England. They both like dogs. They're both very wealthy, and they both even like vacations in the Alps, in the mountains. Okay, they like skiing. I'm talking about 2 different people. One is Prince Charles, and one is Ozzy Osbourne. I don't know if you know that, but Ozzy Osbourne is like this rock star who was eating a bat on stage. Completely different people, right? But I told you 6 facts about them that seem like, oh yeah, they're very similar. And if you use the wrong persona in the wrong way, you might put them in the same persona, the same bucket, but they're very different. And that's the danger with personas. Yeah.
So then how do we segment our customers? How do I know who I'm targeting? On what basis do I create that customer segmentation? Like maybe Muhammad, you can even give us some examples, because I'm sure a lot of people in the audience actually use Flowered. So how do we segment these customers? How do we define them?
So, sorry, I'm on mute. No, okay, so on mute. Better. So there are many ways to segment like the audience. Okay, so like it depends on the data you have. It depends on the market itself and the data available about the customers. So is it demographic, geographic, psychographic, technographic, behavioral segmentation, all of these. So males, females, and as Johan said, like, okay, this might help in building the persona, but at the same time, it might be misleading. And there's one layer also for above that is when you like for personalization and this behavioral segmentation of the customer, where it falls in your journey. Okay, so as this customer is just started the journey, they just know about Flowered, for example. Okay, so they just heard about it and they are interested, they are exploring the app, or they already installed the app and registered, or they viewed the product. A couple of arrangements might be for their birthday or their friend's birthday, and or his anniversary or her anniversary, and added to cart, but then they struggled in the middle, or just they get distracted by anything, or this customer is a churn customer or a repeat customer or a frequent customer. So all of these ways are ways to segment your customers that you can use it in your advertisement or the campaigns or the platforms you are going to advertise or you communicate to. So let's say like we identified our customers, like, okay, so we need husbands, okay, who are in last minute for their anniversary. Okay, so they forget their anniversary, which is common thing for many people, and they want like so they want to save the day and they want to send the flowers. So might be like, okay, we have this 25 to 35 this segment, or to 45 segments, males who has anniversary and upcoming as a live event in Facebook or on Google, for example. So all of these segments and all of these customers will help you to draft your communication and land them or drive them into the right product mix and that you are offering. Okay, so because for Flowered we have a lot of occasions, sentiments, all of this stuff. So based on this, we can build our communication and then drive them to the right product that fits their needs at that time.
Nice. So basically, you guys mentioned like dividing your customers up by demographics or by behavior or by even their interaction with the product itself. But then how do we find that sweet spot between not making it too specific, not making it too generic? Like, what is that? What have you guys found that sweet spot yourselves in your marketing journeys? Like, what have you found to be the most effective in defining your customers? Like, if you had to choose like one, like the most important, what would you say that would be?
So for me, the framework that I teach the startups I use myself is called jobs to be done. Amina, you've heard about this. It's basically jobs to be done means what is the job? What is the purpose? Why your customer is using you or hiring you for? So in other words, like, what are you doing for them? You know, so that sounds pretty simple, I'm guessing, when you first hear about it. Okay, we can follow up with a few like recommendations. There's one ebook which I highly recommend. It's called "When Coffee and Kale Compete." It's a free ebook where you can read about this. But basically, the idea is that you know, the job that a customer hires you for can be something very functional. So for example, I'm using now the example of Leadsy. A marketing agency could hire us for functionally because they want to get access to their clients' accounts, right? It's like a functional thing. But there could also be an emotional reason. Emotional reasons are especially on the consumer side, very strong. I'm going to try this with the B2B side now. So emotionally, the marketing founders or people who use us, they actually want to feel like that this is something that they don't have to worry about. So it gives them stress, it gives them anxiety if they have to jump on a Zoom call, have to explain how it all works. Like it's just like something that stresses them out, basically, right? And takes time of their day. And then also there's a social element. So it's functional, social, emotional. And the social side would be, I want to show others, hey, I'm a professional agency guy. I do this, I invest in that because I want to save you as my client time, and I want to save time myself as well, of course. So I'm being regarded as someone who's efficient, but also innovative. I'm using a new tool, which is, something that, reflects good on me. And you can use the same thing for all sorts of products to understand what is really the motivation, why your customer is using you. And there's usually these 3 dimensions that I just spoke about. So this is something that I'm using to build my personas, including also like what are frustrations with the current solution. So this is an important thing that people often forget. They think we have a new product or service and it's completely new, like nothing exists like that. But the reality is that people have been using something to solve this problem that they're hiring you for before, right? So for example, with Leadsy, they would have done it manually. They would have walked the client through via Zoom calls. They would have like PDF guides of several pages where they had to, where they explain how it all works. But it wasn't a great solution. Before there was PayPal, you could send cash or checks internationally. Also, that worked. Before there was Uber, you could also hire get a taxi by just literally like holding out your hand and waiting, or like maybe calling a number. But there was always ways to solve these problems, but they weren't as good. And so there were frustrations coming with that. And that's what you should be using and tapping into in your marketing. And that's how everything comes together.
When you guys talk about your customers, it's so deep. Like it feels like they're your best friend, like their deepest, darkest secrets and pains. And when realistically we're just sitting in an office and we're in front of our laptops the whole day. So how, as marketeers, how do you get this information to get this deep understanding about your customers? Where do you get that information from?
So like actually like for it depends, like again, so like you always have these tracking tools, and that gives you like the data you have. So like, okay, like just as location, what are the customer language are using, what is the average age, and also and all of these data, like actually it's going, like sadly is going to expire, but just like good news also on the other side, because I am fan of privacy, but just like this first data about you, like the first part data you are going to you collect from your customer in your registration forms. For example, what are their emails, what is their birth date, and sometimes you might want to incentivize the customer to share such data and private data with you. Like, okay, I might want to share my birth date, but just like if like, okay, on your birth date you might get a free gift on or free flowers on your birthday, you might be encouraged to share your birth date. Also, all of these data, there are also like external resources. Well, I'm not using that, but just like there are external resources like data management platform that can use to enrich your customer's database. But I think like also like whatever the data you have, connect but I would encourage more to rely on the first party data, like the ones you collect from your customers directly through engagement and conversation. But it doesn't mean you have to overcomplicate your registration form.
Yeah. What about the deep information that you can't get from a registration form? So for example, what he hates, what he loves, when he sleeps, his relationship with his friends that defines the jobs to be done. Like, how do you get that information that you can't like just ask your customers, like, or like right off the bat, or can you ask those questions? Like, Johannes, maybe you can give us some examples of how you get to that deep emotional understanding of the customer as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, someone has already spoiled it in the chat. I think it's really the best way to get these insights is to talk to your customers. And obviously there are people in most organizations who actually talk to customers on a daily basis, customer service, sales people, you know, possibly others. But obviously they will get some really good insights for sure, but they're not going to ask very deep questions to get into the psychology of your customers, right? So this is something that is probably needs dedicated customer interviews, and these customer interviews, yeah, they need to be definitely organized separately, and you need to just do them essentially. They're not creepy or annoying. Like from my experience, customers are very happy. The ones that do these interviews are happy to do them. I'm very happy to give insights. Obviously, you shouldn't ask them about their relationship status or anything that's kind of awkward and weird. Also, please bear in mind cultural differences. But you want to understand, essentially, here's some really the key thing about these customer interviews, and that's something that people often do wrong. We want to understand the past behavior that your customers or potential customers have shown or have done. So you don't want to ask them, oh, imagine you had this tool that would give you access in just 2 clicks. Would you buy that? Or, you know, something like that. That's not a good question, because they're just going to say, either they like you and they say, yeah, of course, I would really buy that. Or they don't like you and they might say, oh, no, I don't like you. So I want to stop talking to you now. So I don't know. You know, like, this is not a good way. But if you ask them about, hey, can you talk to us about the last time when you onboarded a client? How was this experience for you? And then when they talk about the process and like the factual things, you can also ask, how did this feel? So especially in the gifting realm, Mohammed will probably be able to confirm that. It's very important that you have a good feeling, right? That ideally the person who you gave the gift to tells you later, oh my God, Johannes, you're such a great gift giver. You really know me. You gave me a thoughtful gift. And that's what makes them feel really good, right? So that's what you want to try to understand in those interviews. What motivated you? Why did you actually want to get a gift? Why the flowers and not the cake? Or I don't know. You know, so like understanding that is only possible in a conversation. And I think that is sometimes, you know, sometimes hard to organize these things and make the time, but it's so worth it. And it's something that, yeah, I encourage people to do as often as possible.
Nice. So we talked about defining our customers. We talked about getting data about those customers. Now, when we have all of that, how do we use it? So now I know what they love. I know what they hate. Now, what do I do with my packaging, with my social media, with my advertising, with the different aspects? How do I actually use that information now? Let's talk about messaging, for example. How do you make that emotional connection using that data, using marketing? How do you bring it all together? Maybe Muhammad, because your product is so emotional. It's all about gifts and occasions. So how do you make that, how do you use that information to make that message? What is that message?
So basically, like when you have all of this data and you have this customer in mind and this segment in mind, okay, so you would know what resonates with them, the reason why we have it, and what will trigger their behavior or their mind, like, I want to do that right now, right? So but the thing is, you want to deliver the right message. So the messaging you are going to have is like has to resonate to these customers. Okay, so you have to do these trainers aligned with your brand and your brand voice, brand tonality, brand values, and all of that stuff. And it represents actually your product and the solution that it's offering to these customers. And then once you decide the communication and the message, what is the format, what it would be, is it video, static images, or SMS, whatever this message will be. And then you will decide, like, okay, for these customers, how I'm going to reach these target audience. So are these customers on Facebook? Okay, this age group, like, okay, for millions, or they are Generation Z on the TikTok, they want to reach them. Or might be it's an offline, I have to go to this, if you are offering a B2B product, you might want to just go and just like to an event or a summit to share these and exhibit there to share your product and there. So it really depends again, like, okay, it start like knowing your customer very well, then you have to formulate this message and communication and find the right way, medium, that you are going to communicate that. And finally, like, just like to engage and measure all of these results, like during this process.
Okay. What is the right message? Like, what does that even mean? The right message? Like, we say that a lot, we hear that a lot, but what is that? What does that mean?
Okay, that needs another session, I think. Like, so, because the way, like, we usually, like, let's say when we have, let's say, this idea or this product or this feature, and we want to communicate with this customer, so we start with formatting all of this. What is the functionality of this customer? What is the value it is generating? What is and whom the customer who want to communicate to, and then you will find this, like, it's not the message, it's not the tagline, the message is not the idea, the message is not the advertisement, the message is not the videos, the message is not the music. It's something like it has to deliver, like, the right message is the thing, like, that you want to communicate to your customer, that they can get it from the first time, right? So sometimes we'll fall into this trap. Okay, so we find this creative idea that is very twisting and just like this creative that makes the customer think, and we let's say we have this message that will make us, and we give and make it on a billboard. Let's say just a random example, shows just like we didn't do that, but just like it passed in our mind. Okay, so you have this, we thought like, okay, let's have a big QR code on billboards where customers has to scan it. But just like if you think, when we think about it, like right now, okay, so this, like, and it will make people curious and they want to scan to know what is that. But it's like, if you imagine your customer on the highway and seeing a QR code. So how can he just go that? So it is not, obviously this is not the right message, except like, okay, so it might be just one line. Okay, flower bringing your feelings to life, for example. Okay, or flower delivers your feeling with flower and symbol and someone who's smiling. So it this mix of knowing, again, like, what is the medium, who is the customer, and this message they will relate to this and just make things, like, even if they don't buy right now, the next time they're thinking about buying flower or have this occasion, they will consider flower as their first solution.
Nice. So the messaging is everything. It's the picture, the language, the voice, the technique, the channel. It's literally everything. Is that what the messaging is?
It's yes, and because it really depends. Like, okay, so because if you decided you are going to use SMS, you cannot have a video, for example, on that, or you will have a link or something. Or if you like, and if you want someone to advertise for someone above 60 years old or 45 years old, you don't have this. If you want to advertise for Generation Z right now, which like studies show, like, okay, the attention span is 3 seconds to 6 seconds, and you have to capture this. So it's very it's very like, all of these are defining the message you want to communicate. So all of these are factors you have to consider when you are crafting the message you are trying to do.
Nice. What do you think, Johannes? What do you think the right message is? What does that even mean to you? Because I feel like with marketeers, each person has like a different perspective into like messaging. It's such a used term that's used in different contexts. So what do you think?
I mean, if you bring it down to the essence, I think marketing is super simple, right? If we have done the work that I was just describing, so if we know what does the customer actually care about, what is the job to be done that they want this product to do or service, who are they? So what do they believe in? What are their concerns, objectives? What are they currently using? That would be also great knowledge, right? And so what's the real pain point? We have this information. Now what it takes is a little bit of the art side of marketing. Marketing is definitely science, but also some art, right? Like, how can we craft this into a message? So, I mean, to give you an example, an ad that we're running for Leadsy is really me as a screen share, pretending to explain to someone via Zoom how you can actually give me access, right? So, and then obviously the message is something like, hey, do you really want to waste your time doing this? Something along those lines. Or do you want to appear professional, right? So once you know all these pieces, even I, who is not great at copywriting, I'm not very good at creating videos, like all of this is like, I'm not really good at that. Hopefully at some point we can afford someone who's really good at creating the content, writing copy, to make it even better. But even without being so good at that, if I have these building blocks, I can craft a good message, right? And that is a good message. Like, the right message is something that ticks these boxes that actually, I would say, put it in layman terms, I would say the right message is a message that speaks to the customer. The customer reads it or consumes it and thinks, that's talking to me. Like, it's something that actually seems like it's really, maybe it seems creepy almost, because they think, oh, how do they know that I'm actually dealing with this problem? Like, that would be a great message, right?
Yeah. And so now that we know the customer, we know the message, and we figured out the content, whether it's simple, whether it's complex. I think the thing now, the biggest question is, what channel do I use? Am I supposed to use social media? Am I supposed to use do I post a picture? Do I use a video? Like, how do you now deliver that? Like, especially with so many different options of like digital channels today, how do you choose? How do you know what to choose?
So with channels, basically we go back to, again, who is the customer we're trying to reach, right? And then we need to think, where do they hang out? So is it someone who hangs out, spends a lot of time on TikTok, Snapchat, or Instagram? Or is it someone who actually doesn't like any of this and was like, I much rather, stay offline and I want to go to events in person, or I use like very anti-advertising, very privacy focused tools or something. Then we need to think about, how can we still reach this person? So that's where it all comes from. And then the channels are really secondary, right? It's like, use a channel that works where you think your customer you will be able to reach them there. Obviously, then the creative execution very much is determined by the channel, right? Like, of course, you can't even run the same ad on Instagram or on TikTok. And I say that without even knowing that much about TikTok, but I know it's very different, So that needs to be tailored to that channel and audience. So if you want to decide what channel to focus on, the first checkpoint is like, is my customer actually there? And then the second one is also, this is something I wouldn't forget about, is, do we have the expertise to be really good at this? So if you have someone in your team who is like amazing at maybe a channel that's relatively new still, like TikTok, maybe it can give you a really good edge. But of course, first make sure that the customer is there. If not, then look for something else. Yeah.
We have some really good questions that I'm dying to jump to. So I'll read out the question, and then you guys can just, like, if you're interested in answering, you guys can just let us know. So someone asked, curious to know, what are your recommendations on who to have on your marketing team? In-house versus agencies? How many people minimum? This is a very good question, especially for smaller businesses. So what would you guys recommend for this?
And it's a very good question. Like, okay, so when we started, we were team of 3. It was me, George. I think like George is letting me a big shout out to George, and like this, and one social media member. We were doing everything in-house to an extent, like, okay, but just like at one point of time, you might want like, okay, so if you're starting and you cannot find the right talent, you might want to outsource to a different agency. So it really depends on the volume and what you want to actually, like, what do you want like to actually achieve from this. So the decision between outsource agency and in-house, it really depends on the talent pool in the market. So might be this skill you need is not available and for a full-time, or you cannot afford a full-timer to do that. So you might want to outsource that to an agency, or it really depends. It really depends on the stage and the volume of work, what you want to achieve. So again, there's no one perfect one, but just like yeah, and I leave it to it.
Yeah. It's very challenging because even when I reflect back on the experience within startups, it's difficult because within marketing, you have one person that's an expert in SEO, but then he doesn't know how to design. He knows how to design, but then he says, I don't do copywriting. And then someone that does copywriting that says, I don't do video production, that's content. So then how can I properly market across channels to the right customer if each person only knows how to do one thing? So how do you guys tackle that?
Well, yeah, it's difficult, but also that's what we mentioned at the beginning. Marketing is just a lot of different things, and you cannot assume you hire one person and they do all of what is supposed to be marketing, right? I would say you need to so let's start with a smaller company. So you're a founder and maybe another 2 founders. Let's say typically someone is technical. It's the typical use case. And you start like building up your operations and you get some revenue. You would typically like one founder would do everything that is marketing and sales and all of that. And then that should involve also testing which channel actually works for us. Like what is the first kind of traction channel that gives us something? And if you realize, okay, this is something that works for us, but obviously me, myself, I cannot really do everything. I need a specialist. Let's try to find the specialist. Or maybe you realize, I don't need a specialist. I need someone who can take off some of the like more general tasks. Like there's just so much small things that I need someone to just do everything. And maybe I can teach this person something over time, and someone who's more junior who wants to learn. So I think, again, like, of course, I don't want to say it depends, but it is what Mohammed also said. It depends really on your business. And yes, trying to find this like perfect marketer who does everything is very, very difficult and also very expensive, because these people can demand a lot of money. So I would say start with people who really believe in your mission, who are smart, who can learn quickly. Like marketing also is not rocket science. Let's be honest, right? Like even Facebook ads and Facebook Business Manager and all these things with it. And with that, other platforms that work very similarly, someone who's smart can learn it relatively quickly. So you have to hire for the right mindset, someone who has a growth mindset, who wants to learn, wants to experiment. We haven't spoken much about experimentation. I hope we'll have some questions about this. Who is willing to learn, experiment, fail, and then you can build this person up. And if you need someone who is really good at one particular channel, try to hire an expert. I wouldn't recommend agency, but more like freelancers who can fill this gap for you for some time until you've built the knowledge in-house.
Why would you say go with a freelancer instead of an agency? What's the difference?
So agencies, the problem is often the kind of the incentive and the kind of the connection with what the agency is supposed to do and how it's connected with your internal results. Agencies, yeah, it's often very hard for agencies to do a good of a job or better than an internal person, because they're not as connected as you are to everything that's happening. They don't know your brand that well. They don't know your customers that well. And many agencies try to maybe find shortcuts and then just can't do such a good job. At the same time, it does take some time for them to learn, but you will realize maybe that very quickly that it's not that you don't have enough time for them to learn everything. There's some structural issues with agencies too, where usually it's like the people who actually do the job, do the actual work, are relatively young, maybe not even that experienced. So you may be better hiring someone or having a specialist that just does this particular area. Yeah, so agencies, if you find a great agency that's really, really good, like, please do it. But from my experience, I've always found it quite difficult, and it doesn't, like, the cost relation isn't always, the benefit cost relation isn't always that good.
Okay, nice. You mentioned experimentation, and there is actually a point about experimentation. So what is the role of experimentation in marketing? Maybe Mohammed, you want to start off with that. Like, do you do experiments at Flowered for marketing, or do you just run with a campaign instantly when you guys get an idea?
No, there's always A/B testing all the time. We usually do A/B testing all the time, and we test and we monitor what is working, what is not working, and then we go back to the whiteboard and just like we draft and then publish, launch, test again. It's a process. Like it's something always on. I know Johannes is very excited to like it was about this, so I leave the floor to Johannes about that.
No, I totally know. This is exactly what I would have said. It's just, so we spoke about like what's the right message. Of course, again, I told you all of these like foundational things that we should know about our customer, and then we should come up with different hypotheses, like what do we think could work, like this sort of ad and maybe this sort of content, and then we just need to look at the data and see, does this actually work? And ideally, we have something to test against. So as Mohammed mentioned, some A/B testing. We can also do a pre-post testing, look at the results after we made a change. But testing is extremely important in marketing, and you know, especially in digital marketing, it's relatively easy to test things. I would say sometimes it's maybe too easy, so people test a lot of things that don't really make any difference. That can also be a waste of time. So I would say always try to have clear hypotheses. So why do you think this could work? Then think about like how much could the impact be of this change? If you change a little color somewhere, or maybe even a headline, is it really worth it to test this, or do we have enough traffic? And then that makes it worth to actually look at these results, because analyzing an experiment, setting up the experiment, analyzing all that takes time, and we usually don't have time, right? We want to move fast, especially when we are a startup.
It's the most limited resource time. Like it's the thing that's the most difficult to get hold of. Mohammed, this next question, I think you'd be able to tackle very well with your experience. What is the best marketing technique to push a message idea in the GCC and MENA region? So in the region, what's the best marketing technique, would you say, that's effective?
So it's very difficult for me to answer like for Flowered, because in Flowered we are platform agnostic, so we don't have this preference one, but just like there are some channels we have tested in some countries is working, and even within the same country it differs from city to city. So for example, in Saudi, for example, if I'm saying like, okay, so Snapchat might be very popular in Riyadh, but Twitter in Jeddah, Instagram in Dammam. So it doesn't, like, it is not that easy question. So you have to test first. And then as Johannes said, like you make sure that your customers are there, and you measure, always measure the campaigns result, and then you double down on what is working, and then you keep reallocating and shuffling budget from one channel to channel. But influencers marketing has worked for us in the past. Might be results are changing right now, but just like it worked very well at the beginning. At some of the countries, radio ads were very effective. So it really again it varies from a market to another. Like, so you cannot, like, it's very tough, but just like it depends. Like if you have let's say if you have, like, again, it depends on the market. If you are a B2B business, might be all of the digital advertisement is not for you. Okay, so it really depends. It might be a radio ad is very efficient for you. It may be a TVC for if you're targeting females and home, like, or others. But I know, like, with the rise of video on demand, it might be it's a difficult to reach the same audience. So it really depends on the market. But just like there are a lot of stuff that has worked for us. at Flowered. One of them is influencers. Influencers has
Nice.
worked very well for us in Saudi, especially.
Any ideas about Bahrain? If someone's targeting people in Bahrain, what channels would you recommend?
So Bahrain is very small market. Like actually, like I was suffering like when I was speaking about like with any of the digital platforms. They like because Facebook, Snapchat, and Twitter, they always like to this scale, so this machine learning algorithms can focus can originate. But just like for us, like for example, like Google Ads has worked very well for us, like for the Google platform or the Google channels across like search, YouTube videos or app installs campaigns was very efficient for us in Bahrain, for example. Snapchat, Twitter, Snapchat and Instagram worked well, and within some of the communities. The result was somehow is expensive, higher than other GCC countries, but it worked.
Interesting. I would never have guessed Google to be for Bahrain. Honestly, I would have thought Instagram just because that's the one that's mostly used. But it's interesting to see that it's actually Google. That's an interesting insight. Johannes, I'll give you the next question. How do you handle marketing and MVP, which is a very good question. So that's so difficult. Usually the product is quite shaky. What advice do you have for startups looking to market their MVP, minimal viable product?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I mean, so first of all, there's often a bit of people are a bit scared to market something that's not perfect, and I would say don't worry about it. First of all, perfection doesn't exist anyway. Like, what is perfect? Nothing is ever perfect. Neither does your customer think something is perfect. They always want something better. And then if it's an MVP, so here I guess the question is, the product is shaky. The idea here is find people where this product, even though it's an MVP, so MVP means it actually is viable for some customers. So a small, probably a relatively small niche of customer find this product viable, right? So that would be an MVP, okay? So if that is the case, then try to find this initial customer who you're solving this pain point for, and then market it in a way that is probably very scrappy and very personal. So try to find them on, I don't know, LinkedIn, via email. I mean, maybe the region is more like try to find their phone number so you can WhatsApp them. Whatever way you can to be very personal, right? So try to get this first feedback of, like the first 10, 20, up to 50 people, to just try to talk to them and understand how they can use you. And also try to make them feel special, right? Try to make them feel like you build a solution only for them. And then that's, okay, the solution is not perfect, but this solves their pain point. And then obviously you need to make sure that they understand that you're maybe just like a small team and that you're really doing your best, and they will forgive you for bugs and problems. Don't worry about that. That has never been a problem with any of my startups. And I had a lot of different bugs, even though I have great developers, but sometimes code can break and there can be problems, and that's completely fine. Like it's usually a bigger deal for the founders than it is for the customers.
And what type of budget, if I can add a follow-on question to that. So now let's say you are marketing an MVP, you did a bit of outreach where it's free, like you're not actually doing any marketing spend. So you're just going on WhatsApp and all these platforms. But what if you want to start spending? How do you allocate that? Do you allocate a big amount? Do you allocate a smaller amount? How do you approach that with an MVP when it comes to spending on marketing? Or maybe even just not an MVP, maybe it's just an experiment. You have an experiment you want to spend. How do you approach that?
I think, first of all, you have to be clear, what is your goal? Are you just trying to get some customers to see how they're using your product, to get feedback? Okay, then have some amount of money that you're not going to be too sad about, and just see what works. But obviously try to, be be frugal in a way and see like, okay, how can we optimize this in a good way, so we're not spending, I don't know, like $500 and we get 5 customers. That wouldn't really be great, right? So we probably want to be like, start very small, and then once we see something is working, then spend more. And that's actually also great. Like in these platforms, you can start small. You can start with $10 a day, and you will get some insights. So I wouldn't be too afraid of that. There are, yeah, you will definitely have disadvantages if you don't spend a lot of money, because there's less data coming back to feed the algorithms. But for first testing, it's fine. What was your other question about that? So
it was just about like, how much do you spend on experimentation and MVP? But I like that answer, like where you spend a bit, an amount you won't be sad about. I think that's the key point. If you lose the amount, you don't get any traction, you won't regret it. That's good advice.
One small thing to add. Another thing though is, don't be too frugal, because basically what you're trying to do is you also want to learn as quickly as possible. So if you are in a phase where you want to grow quickly, and you spend like you just raised the money, you just raised like, I don't know, $100,000, $500,000, and then I see startups who are like, oh, I don't want to spend too much, like maybe $1,000 there. And it's like, why? Because that means it will take you much more time to learn what works. So it's better to spend like, I don't know, 10,000, 50,000 in a month. But if you then know exactly, okay, these 2 ads can get us, you know, like this many customers per month on whatever budget we have, for like a perfect cost per acquisition CPA, that's much better, right? So don't be too afraid to spend, because it will allow you to learn faster. And learning faster, again, we don't have much time. So that's another thing. It's hard to get the balance right, but yeah, it's important.
Nice. We have 2 more questions before we conclude. What are some marketing resources? So if someone wants to learn about marketing, read about marketing, what are some resources that they could use? Because there's so much out there, there's so much noise. Like the minute you just write marketing tips on Google, there's like 50 million results. So what are some resources you guys would recommend?
There are a lot of resources, just like depends on the topic you are looking for. So I usually I enjoy reading Medium. Okay, so these articles from people I follow on Medium, and I think Ad Age and Ad Week are great source of inspiration. But I'm not so frequent on that, but just like search engine journal was one of the things I was always on. Yeah, that's mainly the top 3, I think, like we're on right now.
Nice. There's a really good question. If the startup has a lot of seasonality, should we spend money in our low season to make sure that we can still have customers, even though the cost per acquisition cost is very high? Or should we save our money until our season comes around? That's a very good question.
Okay, you should keep spending. So but just like not the same amount. For my side, like, okay, so we have these big seasons, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, but just like we don't stop spending across the year. We have to be there on the top of their mind. You might want to upsell or cross-sell to focus your spend during these low season on upselling or cross-selling to the existing customer or existing buyers, and just like switch the spend, like lower your spend on brand awareness or the acquisition. And when the season comes, you might you will double more like on that trade, but definitely continue spending, but wisely.
Okay, so should spending change based on season? So we should always be spending on marketing, right? Is that the advice? Always spend on marketing, but then just change up how much you spend?
Spend wisely and efficiently, yes.
So definitely if you have seasons where, like, for example, how I mentioned Father's Day or Mother's Day, of course, I'm sure Floward is going to spend more around Mother's Day, but you want to just try to have some learnings before Mother's Day of like what is actually going to work. That can be tricky, right? So if you're trying to test specific ads for Mother's Day, you can't test this, I don't know, around Christmas or whatever. So it's tricky, but if it's more seasonality based on other, like, depends what seasonality it is. Like if it's specific occasions, try to use learnings from other occasions that you can then apply. But definitely, like the big thing is try to learn as much as you can throughout the year, so that it's not like, oh, it's Mother's Day now, let's spend all of our money, and then you don't know how to spend it efficiently. But of course, if this is the time for you to acquire the majority of your customers, spend as much as makes sense, as much as is profitable in the mid or long term. Yeah.
Okay.
And one thing, like, so I just like to follow up here, like, just like, for example, like now we are coming into this biggest season of the year for Black Friday for e-commerce, right? So it's the upcoming or White Friday in our region, as we call it. So you might, like, sometime you might want, like, okay, I'm not ready for the war, I don't want to go to that. So you might want, like you don't want to spend there because all of these giant companies are advertising and competition and raising the costs over you. So you have to know when you should go to war and when you have to step back.
Okay, nice. I think especially with this question, it's focused a lot as well on the low seasons. So like when it's like, it breaks your heart to spend that amount, knowing that there aren't a lot of customers, you know? So it feels like you're always tempted to just hold back and wait, but then at the same time, you really want customers. Should we diversify our marketing during seasonality? Is it a good time to test? Is it a bad time to test? Because it's a low season. How do we approach that? It's very tricky when it's a low season. What do you guys think?
Yeah, as I said, like, try to use the time to learn as much as you can, and yeah, try to experiment with things that are not directly related to the season. But it's tricky, of course.
Okay.
But yeah, don't just like sit down and go like, oh, I'm just going to go on holiday for the next 3 months, right? You want to do something to prepare and learn.
Okay, nice. Last question. What's a CRM platform? What CRM platform do you suggest for startups? Any ideas?
This would be considered an advertisement, and like, this is not a sponsor guide. Like, it depends on what are your needs. Okay, so do you have an application, so you need push notification and email, or like again, like, what is the definition of CRM? Actually, like, this is one different question. Like, so it is very tricky, but just like from a marketing perspective, we call this terminology on the tools we are using to communicate with our customers. So it might be someone means a different CRM or a different you mean the software or something like that, or ERP. So just like, I will stick to that one. So again, it really depends on the features what you are looking for in a communication platform you want to use, or engagement platform you are going to use. So there are a lot of that, and then the price ranges. So there are great softwares or great tools or CRMs that are there, but just you cannot afford it. So it depends on your budget. What do you really need from that software? So there are Braze, MailChimp for email. They got just and for email only, you might want email only. You might want automation, or Klaviyo or CleverTap or MoEngage. There are a lot of softwares. So do a research, like specify exactly what you want from that CRM to decide which one is best for your company.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Muhammad. Thank you, Johannes. It was amazing having you guys on our first panel discussion on marketing tips. So thank you so much. If you guys have any final words, any closing tips that you guys would like to add?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here on this podcast. I really, really enjoyed it. Sorry, not podcast. This panel discussion. Everything is mixed these days. And what would I say? So my last words, just really keep your marketing simple by really focusing on your customer needs. Try to talk to your customers. I know it sounds crazy. I've done this even with people in Korea that have a very different culture, where it's even more like kind of, you never want to be direct with people, but even there they really loved it and got such great insights. If you focus on your customer, this is the only guaranteed way to succeed in the long term. So that's my big advice for you.
Thank you so much, Johannes. Muhammad.
Thank you, Amina. Thank you, Hopefund, for this, and thank you to Johannes for the great. I enjoyed really your answers. So again, as Johannes said, please keep it simple. Please keep it simple. Don't get distracted by vanity metrics. Have one North Star KPI, and focus on that and optimize toward it, and build your strategy on on a goal-driven approach. That would be one of the things. There are a lot of things, but just I'll keep it like this.
Thank you guys so much. You guys, we learned so much from your experience, from all the points you mentioned. And inshallah, we'll see everyone in upcoming sessions. We'll be sending this recording to everyone's email, and we will be uploading it to YouTube. So in case you missed out on anything, you want to go back and check any points, you can do that. Thank you guys. Good night. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Amina. Have a nice day, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye. Goodbye.